This is Jim Fetzer in Madison, Wisconsin, with David Scorpio in the exotic land of Ecuador, and Michael Ivey from Asheville, North Carolina. We are here to share with you the latest news you need to know. We begin with the Trump administration officially beginning the transition to Biden after weeks of delay. This is moving forward. We'll discuss what it actually means. Here you have President-elect Biden addressing the Trump administration's lawsuit to overturn the Affordable Care Act. Notice his ear. This is clearly the debate Biden. This is not the real Joe Biden. I find it embarrassing and shocking that this is all going forward. I've also pointed out the body language differences. When his wife Shill is with the real Joe, she's just beaming. They're usually hand in hand. When she's walking with a body double, however, it's quite different. I would suggest, by the way, the body double seems to have broader shoulders than Joe Biden. Very interesting. Meanwhile, here's another photograph to show Joe has pendant earlobes. His ear turns up. This guy's comes down. Not the same guy. He's got a narrower face and more of a cleft in his chin. There's a slight cleft in Joe, but not the same. I think James McCanney observed that this guy seems to have had some surgery around his eyes to make him look more like him. Lawyers for the Trump campaign, including Rudy Giuliani, have lodged lawsuit in many swing states to help put Biden over the top, that help put Biden over the top. Most of them, which in some cases have asked judges to block states from certifying, have been rejected. But those were mostly at a low level. Meanwhile, the letter from Murphy from the General Service Administration had withheld her decision. Was revealed by a tweet from the president. I want to thank Emily Murphy at GSA for her steadfast dedication and loyalty to our country. She's been harassed, threatened, and abused. I do not want to see this happen to her family, or employees at GSA. Our case strongly continues. Keep that up. Keep that in mind. Our case strongly continues. I have more about that, but your thoughts about this development, Scorpio?
Well, Jim, this is all very disturbing. You know, it's bad enough we had a phony election, a fixed election, obviously fixed, and we have a phony candidate. That's not even Joe Biden. The more I look at this guy, the more it becomes apparent to me it's not the same man. What I'm noticing particularly is, as James McCanney pointed out, this man has had plastic surgery, no question about it. And I'm also noticing a very different cadence in the way the guy speaks. He has a stronger voice, and I believe this man is younger than Joe Biden. And if you notice too, they're always showing him kind of jogging up to the podium now, like he's so vigorous and youthful. It's really disgusting. And you know, he's packing his so-called administration with a bunch of Obama retreads. You know, we're going to see Obama 2.0. And you know, John Kerry was just appointed the climate envoy, who helped, you know, he helped negotiate this disastrous Paris Climate Accord, which is going to destroy American industry and let China and Russia just run wild with all the so-called polluting they want. People need to see we have a deeply, deeply corrupt country now, and it's very, very sad.
I think those are excellent points. Michael, your thoughts?
Another difference between these two guys that Jim pointed out earlier that I've noticed is true in the interim is that the real Joe Biden almost always has a smile plastered on his face, and the double doesn't. It's not quite as Cheshire Cat as the real guy. what can I say? It's all just disgusting deception and the loss of our country if we can't do anything about it.
I should think before the guy's inaugurated, they would need to verify his identity. We'll see how all this proceeds, but it would certainly be absurd to inaugurate a body double. We have this report of George Soros arrested for election interference, that he's in federal custody. Copies of the alleged indictment have been circulating since the arrest allegedly occurred. Here's another report. Some fact checkers have speculated the document's not real. Others have attested to its validity. The first publication of the document appears to have been on Your Newswire, a reliable conservative publication. It's also notable a judge put a gag order on Soros' arrest. However, those laws don't apply to Canadian media, such as, in this case, the conservative Beaver, which published this. Rebel News owner has stated to conservative Beaver staff the documents look real. His company will be writing a similar story. Is there a Canadian connection? The FBI's source indicated that the service is aware of Soros operations in Canada, and Canadian police have executed a search warrant on Soros' home and offices in Toronto. Meanwhile, I very much hope this to be the case. We have contrary publications asserting that the arrest report is a hoax, that he's not actually under arrest, that the person who made the hoax went so far as to present a falsified indictment, a fake version of a real indictment, charging Russian hackers. There's a nonsense claim that Soros has been arrested for election interference. Error level analysis of the image shows where someone has gone in Paint, that would be a software program online, and erased the real name, typed in Soros. So I think on this, it's inconclusive. I sure like the idea, however. I mean, this is a perfect target for arrest and prosecution for these offenses among the vast array of others. Scorpio, your thoughts?
I'm pretty doubtful of this story. I hope it's true, but I just don't think it is. We have to recognize that there's deceptive stories that are being planted in the internet that are targeted to people like us, to throw us off the track as to what's really going on and make us look a little crazy. But we'll know soon enough if this is a real story. I mean, this would be international headlines. This would be an absolutely massive, massive story if this is actually happening.
Yeah, and of course, you're completely right about planning fake stories to mislead and deceive. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I second what Scorpio just said. It's I'll be skeptical, and it's on I'll believe it when I see something or see him behind bars. Now I think he actually is under indictment in one of the Eastern European countries.
Yeah, Hungary. Yeah,
Hungary. Yes. See, the people in Hungary saw this coming a long time ago, and
right.
we should emulate what their leadership has tried to do.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent point. I love it. Yes. Meanwhile, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and this is no hoax, grants an expedited review for the Trump campaign appeal in Pennsylvania. This is very good. Team Trump attorney Janet Ellis tweeted out the news. Third Circuit Court of Appeals grants expedited review for Team Trump's appeal from Pennsylvania. Breaking report, by the way, I just mentioned this is merely a linked article. Largest number of cluster votes in Wayne County, Michigan came from a psychiatric hospital for patients with severe mental illness. I mean, how nice to exploit these poor residents and create fake ballots in their name. A new analysis by a math expert has flagged up to 100,000 ballots in Pennsylvania that were fraudulent, where, of course, we've already reported how the Federal Election Commission chairman has said this adds to the conclusion there was some level of fraud in this year's election. Of course, simply massive. I estimate the number of ballots that were either requested by someone other than the registered Republican or requested and returned but not counted ranged from 89,397 to 98,801. One affiant stated in his affidavit. The Pennsylvania House Republicans voted for an audit, but it will not be finished before the certification of the vote. The Republicans want the audit of inconsistencies in the voting, but Democrats called the audit unconstitutional. Anything to cover up. We do have this rather fascinating report, which I believe is authentic. Check this out.
It's just, yeah. All right, it's a shopping list. So you got to pay close attention. And if you need something redone, just say stop, and I'll do it over. So, Loretta Lynch, indicted, 3 counts, conspiracy to overthrow the government, 2 counts of obstruction of justice, 3 counts of lying to Congress. Sally Yates, 3 counts, conspiracy to overthrow the government, 3 counts of obstruction of justice. John Brennan, 3 counts, conspiracy to overthrow the government, 3 counts of lying to Congress, 2 counts of lying to investigators, 1 count of conspiracy to commit treason, 3 counts of obstruction of justice.
Pause there. Who was that?
John Brennan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody got that big name there where you heard conspiracy to commit treason. That's this stuff is jumping up the chain very quickly. Go ahead, Mike.
James Clapper, 3 counts conspiracy to overthrow the government, 2 counts of lying to Congress. CIA operatives indicted, no charge, or CIA operatives indicted, no charges listed, which means that I wasn't given those and I don't have their names. James Comey, 3 counts conspiracy to overthrow the government, 6 counts of perjury, 4 counts of obstruction of justice, 4 counts of falsifying government documents. Andrew McCabe, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 2 counts of perjury, 3 counts of lying to Congress, 1 count of falsifying documents. Bruce Orr, 3 counts of conspiracy, what the conspiracy is unknown, but it's 3 counts of some kind of conspiracy. I don't have the actual charge. 1 count of falsifying documents. Baker, indictment, charges unknown. Strzok, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 4 counts of perjury, 3 counts of falsifying documents.
4 counts of falsifying documents on Strzok?
Strzok, 4 counts of perjury, 3 counts of falsifying documents. But he's still subject to another grand jury.
I know.
A lot of these guys, yeah.
I'm trying to do the math on, it's not because the counts matter to me. What I'm trying to figure out is, okay, so if he's got those 3 counts falsifying documents, which 3 documents would Strzok have been in a position to falsify? That's where my brain's going.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put the pieces together. Go ahead.
Well, it could be anything. It could be a 302.
Yeah, exactly.
So it could be anything. So, yeah. All right. Page, 3 counts of conspiracy to overthrow the government, 3 counts of perjury, 1 count of obstruction of justice. Rod Rosenstein, 5 various charges, exact unknown at this time. Susan Rice, illegal use of government systems, 3 counts of perjury, 1 count of obstruction.
They got her. They got her on the fucking 702s. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Looks like it.
Yes.
But she's also subject of another grand jury as well. So
those are what he's got. It adds up to me, based on my research, those are appropriate to have come from the Durham investigation. You know, if Baker and Rosenstein worked specified charges, I believe they turned state's evidence and that they're not actually going to be prosecuted for the crimes they have committed, which were left unspecified. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, I'm skeptical about this. I don't think it's going to happen. And, you know, I wish that guy wasn't vaping while all this was going on. You have to wonder what he's smoking. But you know, again, I hope this happens. But, you know, according to the UN documents, when America joined the United Nations, it says in there that no official in the United States government can be charged with treason. This is another problem with this globalism. It's just giving these people cover to do illegal acts without any compunction or without any fear of reprisal.
Yeah.
And I thought James McCanney did a great job with you on the Power Hour. I just recently listened to that about uncovering this voting fraud and just how pervasive it really was. And this idea that there's like basically 10 or 12 super cheating cities where they're able to flip these states. And, according to him, they've even expanded that program since 2016. And, I thought James had an interesting theory about what's really going on with this election. Of course, Joe Biden or his double won't be around very long. And of course, that brings in Kamala Harris as president. And he's theorizing that they may, that Kamala Harris is going to use the 25th Amendment and declare that Hillary Clinton is the vice president. That's a very interesting scenario, and people need to realize they didn't really vote for Joe Biden for several reasons. One, it's not really Joe Biden, and number two, he won't be around long. They're going to replace him.
Yeah, I think that's completely correct. Michael, your thoughts?
In the video that you just played, Jim, who is it who is reading these?
It's a fairly well-known blogger. I'm not real familiar with him, but I must say the specificity of these charges, it would be ridiculous to make it up. And the only possible source I can see would be from the Durham investigation. So I give it credence. But of course, I agree with Scorpio. It's not the same thing as having the documents before us, but I believe this is legit. Your thoughts?
Well, I have to remain skeptical until I know whether this guy who's been reading in that video has some sort of connection with the Durham investigation that you're talking about. I mean, anybody can make up a list of indictments like that.
Yeah, but it's so discrediting. You made up a fake list. It would be an incredibly stupid thing to do. And look at the detail. I mean, different types of charges. These are the right players, believe me.
That's why I'm curious who that was. Who's reading these things?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was given his name, but it slipped by me at the time. It was during the conversation on the air. In any case, very interesting development. We hope pans out. Meanwhile, Sidney Powell has released a statement to we the people. She's a one-woman army trying to save our republic. Her tenacity unmatched, infectious to patriotic Americans who support the president. We know what's at stake, and that's why it's so important she should stay the course. I agree with the campaign statement. Sidney writes that I'm not part of the campaign's legal team. I never signed a retainer agreement or sent the president of the campaign a bill for my expenses or fees. My intent has always been to expose all the fraud I could find and let the chips fall where they may, whether it be upon Republicans or Democrats. We will not allow this great republic to be stolen by communists from without and within, or our votes altered or manipulated by foreign actors in Hong Kong, Iran, Venezuela, or Serbia, for example, who have neither regard for human life nor the people who are the engine of this exceptional country. We, the people, elected Donald Trump and other Republican candidates to restore the vision of America as a place of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The evidence I'm compiling is overwhelming that this software tool was used to ship millions of votes from Donald Trump and other Republican candidates to Biden and other Democratic candidates. We are proceeding to prepare our lawsuit and plan to file it this week. It will be epic. Meanwhile, General Flynn's brother gives a perfect explanation. 3 days ago, the legal advisor to the President Trump team lawyer, Jenna Ellis, tweeted about Rudy and Sidney saying they released the Kraken. One Twitter user attempted to explain. Victoria Tenzing, Joe DeGeneva, Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, and others working on the case are not considered president's counsel. They are working independently, not hard to understand. Lynn Wood said the other day he is working on his own. Joe Michael, Flynn's brother, knows Sidney well after having defended his brother, tweeted an explanation, asked Americans to consider donating to her and to the team of lawyers working for Sidney, fighting for the truth to be revealed. What's the background? The Trump campaign senior legal advisor, Rudy Giuliani, released the statement saying Sidney is practicing law on her own, not a member of the Trump legal team, not a lawyer for the president in his personal capacity, even though the president himself had referred to her as a member of his team just a few days ago. I believe that there's a backstory here in that she is pursuing a different legal strategy than the members of his team, and it may be there are important reasons why she needs to be independent and not a member of a sort. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, I'm just very concerned. I hope this works out, but what I see is that every aspect of the media, the CIA-controlled media, because it's even beyond, the Mockingbird media. Now I believe the CIA actually owns the media. It's not, they don't just have elements within the media, the legal system, and the political apparatus is all aligned against Trump and this attempt to have a legitimate election. And I just feel like they're so emboldened by this phony pandemic they've pulled off. They figured they'd pull off a phony election, and that's exactly what they're doing. And I'll tell you, if this entity known as the Joe Biden replacement is installed as president, he can never be accepted as a legal sitting president. And I'm telling you, this guy's going to take a wrecking ball to everything. This climate accord thing is just going to be a disaster, and that's just the beginning. So we cannot accept this phony president as a legitimate president.
Oh, I think you're 100% correct, Scorpio. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're correct, Jim, about there probably being a backstory here. It was all of us sort of had a collective moment of, oh my God, what's going on, when it was announced that she was not on the team. But I think she's just working a different angle. Earlier today, I watched a video of a guy that she's working with, who's evidently a higher level person than most of us know about. And he is the former Overstock.com CEO named Patrick Byrne.
Yeah, I watched it too.
Oh yeah, and I thought that video was pretty darn good at laying out a specific line of election fraud that was happening in Arizona.
This guy is some kind of computer wizard, and actually Sidney had offered him to come on to Tucker Carlson's show, along with an affidavit that was very explicit, which Tucker declined. Tucker has really harmed himself, and I think a lot of people are losing respect for him, which it grieves me because I have praised him so highly in the past, but I no longer feel the same way. He's showing a level of either naivete or ignorance that's inappropriate for him to be reporting on these issues.
Well, Jim, I think they shortened his leash is what happened.
Yeah, that's what it smells like to me too. Somebody gave him a good talking to and asked him how much he loved his children.
How much he loved his children. Yeah.
And his job.
That's pretty disturbing, all right. Meanwhile, here we have more from Sidney going to confront the devil in Georgia this week. So are many others. Some have been quiet or about to speak out. The devil has no idea what he's about to face. Here we have the very fellow you were mentioning, Michael, right here during this interview. He seems like a really smart guy. Meanwhile, underestimate Sidney Powell at your own peril. Fox News' Tucker Carlson fabricated some sort of snip with one of President Trump's attorneys last week. Since then, many of Carlson's own viewers have turned on him. This is not a time for fair weather foxhole mates. It's a time for Americans to stand firmly with President Trump if they want to keep our republic. Some other prominent Republicans are now jumping on the bash Sidney Powell bandwagon as well. To all of those, here's a suggestion. Underestimate Sidney Powell at your own peril. Sidney is not on the President of the United States legal team because she's some ambulance chasing fraud. She's on the President's team because she's a real deal. And of course, this is before they established the separation. A lot had never heard of Sidney before she became General Flynn's attorney. The Russian collusion plot hatched back in January 2017 before the President Trump had ever been sworn in. A meeting took place in the White House with Barack Obama, then Vice President Joe Biden, Sally Yates, James Comey, Peter Strzok, and others. After spying on General Flynn as a part of Trump's transition team, they concluded he'd done nothing illegal, but they were going to get him anyway. I mentioned a number of the people named there are going to be in the Biden cabinet were he to be inaugurated. Sidney walked into that den of vipers and convinced Flynn to withdraw his guilty plea. She took on the U.S. Department of Justice, FBI, and CIA at the same time, got the Department of Justice to recommend the case be dropped, uncovered the explosive memo that ultimately proved the Russian collusion hoax was hatched in the Oval Office, with Joe Biden and Barack Obama working as active participants in the entire illegal scheme. Don't lose sight of what Sidney accomplished with Michael Flynn. She took on the FBI, the DOJ, and the CIA and proceeded to kick their ass. And now we're supposed to throw her into the bus because Tucker had some sort of argument with her? I think not. Here is a statement for Sidney. Georgia is probably going to be the first state I'm going to blow up, accusing a Republican governor of engaging in an illegal scheme. His office didn't immediately respond to a request. Dominion, of course, has categorically denied allegations of election tampering and fraud in recent days. Dominion employees don't have access to the Canvas adjudication system, nor do they operate it. Believe me, there's a lot of bullshit. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Federal Election Commission, Trey Traynor, has repeatedly said there was voter fraud in key states. The massive amount of affidavits we see show there was, in fact, fraud that took place. The questions raised by the Trump campaign in recent days are very important for the legitimacy of the president. And here's a Sidney tweet of yesterday. What I'm going to release tomorrow is going to blow the lid off the whole scheme. Biden wrote his concession speech today. It's going to be epic. I certainly like the sound of that. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, I hope it's true, but the GSA is releasing the funds to these traders and these phony operators. Personally, I just think what we're facing is that the level of corruption within the system is so great that it's going to be very difficult to overcome it. And we're going to see that the levers of power are in too few hands now. And that's going to become increasingly evident to people as we journey down these next several months, because we're going to see this so-called administration run roughshod over the Constitution and the rule of law. And, let's keep in mind, Sidney Powell did, get General Flynn off the hook, so to speak. But, the damage had already been done to his reputation. The media never apologized for their trashing of him for like close to 3 years. And he already had to sell his house to pay legal bills. So the damage had already been done. Thank God he's not actually going to go to prison. But, when they set their sights on ruining someone's reputation and career, that's the problem we face, because, as I said, the levers of power are in very few hands right now, Jim.
Yeah, well, you're making a very telling point, to which I myself have been subjected, a ridiculous fabricated lawsuit that was of a type that's illegal in 27 states to punish me for having exposed deep state secrets, where the court never even ruled on my status as a journalist, in spite of the fact that the basic source of the complaint was an article I published in a book, which actually was in response to an article published by the plaintiff, and where I laid out my history as a journalist. I mean, hundreds of blogs, videos, crying out loud, I have 40 books now. I'm not a journalist. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah.
Yeah, what your specific case, Jim, is a great example of what Scorpio was making reference to. Another attorney that when I hear him talk or hear Sidney talk, it fills me with confidence, is this guy named Lynn Wood, who is really going after the state of Georgia right now.
Yeah.
And these people are just come across as independent, truth and liberty loving Americans that don't want this tidal wave of the swamp and this global inhuman system to overtake the United States. And I think really a lot of people around the world are looking at this too as sort of like the United States being the last bastion of these kinds of human rights in the juggernaut of this global system.
I think you're exactly right. And that Lynn Wood and Sidney are among the highest level, highest caliber attorneys in the United States. Meanwhile, we'll be right back. Here we have a despicable member of Congress from New Jersey who's filing letters seeking the disbarment of Rudy Giuliani and the other Trump campaign lawyers. I mean, this is just grotesque. Meanwhile, and this is something I think really hits it nail on the head, the only way to stop the total and complete loss of the entire Earth to the global gulag system would have required a military solution. It's the last hope that the president as commander-in-chief saves the world from oblivion. He should militarize his supporters into an official arm of the armed forces and prepare to issue an order for them to deploy independently to do what is required to arrest and try the facilitators of the demise of the United States by whatever means necessary. The level of overt deceit by the billionaires, media, social media, politicos, academia, and bureaucrats leaves no other viable option. If the president fails to act as commander-in-chief, the world is lost to the globalist mob. The only clear objective of their actions is the budding genocide of the human species. If he hesitates, we are lost. I do believe that's the final stand, well defined, after the legal options run out. Meanwhile, America's economy cannot survive another lockdown, and the cult of the reset knows it. Here's this despicable, inhuman being, Klaus Schwab. Economy has been on the verge of collapse for at least a decade since it crashed in 2008 and subsequent explosion in fiat stimulus from the Federal Reserve. While the mainstream has always claimed central bankers saved us from another Great Depression, what they actually did was set us up for a far worse scenario, a stagflationary implosion of our society. Here's the primary problem. By injecting trillions of bailout dollars into the system, the Federal Reserve prevented the economy from going through its natural purging cycle, which would have been painful for many but survivable, would have removed large amounts of excess debt, parasitic corporations that produce little or nothing of use, as well as numerous toxic assets with no ultimate value. For a real free market to function, weak or corrupt elements must be allowed to fail and die. Instead, central bankers around the world, and most prominently the Fed, kept all those destructive elements on life support, which has created what amounts to a zombie economy, a system that needs constant outside support, stimulus, in order to continue moving forward. In the process of keeping zombie corporations and other parts of the body alive, healthy parts of the economy, like the small business sector, get devoured. There's much more here to it about the zombie economy. I first heard the term global reset back in 2014-15. I wrote an article about the reset was actually a long-term process. In my article, the global economic reset has begun. Christine Lagarde was the head of the IMF back then, and she mentioned it briefly in multiple interviews. I made a mental note of it because it seemed planted into the discussion very awkwardly, as though it were scripted. Globalist institutions have now come up with numerous phrases that seem to refer to a worldwide planned and dramatic shift in human society sometime in the near future. The Great Reset is another phrase for the New World Order. Important to understand the reset they're talking about has actually been engineered and staged for many years, not something that just popped up in 2020. Been talking about it since at least 2014. Before that, the New World Order, multilateralism, multipolar world, Agenda 2030. The reset is the catalyst phase of an agenda that's been in the works. They have openly admitted to centralize the entire globe into one monetary structure, one highly interdependent and socialized economy, eventually one faceless and unaccountable governing bodies. One of the biggest obstacles to the finalization of the research and formation of the New World Order have been liberty-minded populations across the planet, especially the American people. The U.S. has to be destabilized and eliminated. The old world order has to be brought down before the new can be introduced. People have to be beaten down and desperate. So when the globalists offer their reset as the solution, the public will gladly accept it without question. They simply want the economic pain and uncertainty to stop. Enter the economic lockdowns. They've not only proven to do nothing to stop the spread of the coronavirus, they're also a clear attack on what's left of our economic system. The small business sector in particular is being gutted. More than 60% of those that shut down during the first lockdown were unable to reopen. Small businesses provide more than half of all employment in the United States. When they collapse, the U.S. economy will have nothing left except big box corporations that the Fed put on life support over a decade ago. Real unemployment is already at 26%, will skyrocket even further if a second lockdown were initiated. The speedy collapse of the economy will be assured. The Great Reset can commence. With a presidential election being contested, it's hard to say how the next few months will play out in detail, but a contested election is the best possible scenario for the globalists because it creates a catch-22 situation. If Trump stays in office, the political left will accuse him of usurping the presidency. There'll be mass riots in the streets. Conservatives will be tempted with the idea of bringing in martial law to suppress rioters, and such measures will undermine the flow of the U.S. economy, causing its fragile structure to implode. If Biden enters the White House, on the other hand, then he will attempt a level 4 lockdown similar to the lockdowns we've seen in Australia, France, Germany, and the UK, perhaps one even worse. Our economy will crumble, conservatives will revolt, and Biden will attempt martial law. Either way, the globalists get their crisis and they're in their opportunity. There's suggestions here for how to survive, but it's really talking about organizing their own security and mutual aid within our own communities. Community security is an awesome deterrent against leftist rioting and looting. And basic economic trade can continue if we organize our own community security and localize our economies with barter and trade. We can also act as a deterrent to Biden and any ideas he might have of enforcing national lockdowns. The point is, we can't allow the globalists to dictate the terms of the crisis. We must act to change the rules of the game. I wish I could say I thought those proposals were adequate to the situation, but in my opinion, they fall far short. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, I agree. Those proposals fall far short, but we need to start thinking of alternative means to survive this, because, you know, they're already talking about needing to have proof of a COVID vaccine in order to travel. Quantus Airlines already announced that. All of the other airlines will follow soon. And to me, that's very frightening on multiple levels. And, this is extremely dangerous what we're facing now, Jim. This idea that they're going to disbar Giuliani and these other people that are working on, trying to reveal this election fraud. This is sort of ubiquitous in our culture now, with this cancel culture, and part of this new system where it's like, you go along as we say, or else we're going to, destroy your career, destroy your family, and destroy your reputation. This is becoming very commonplace, and it's shocking, and it's very frightening. If you look at it beyond whether or not you like that particular personality or not. Seeing anyone under this kind of threat is extremely dangerous. And of course, many doctors are facing this same kind of threat by revealing what they know about the COVID hoax. They're being threatened with losing their license, and this is terrible.
You're right. It's a form of fascism. This is really a monstrous situation. I couldn't agree more, Scorpio. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, as soon as I saw this article about this Bill Pascrell guy from New Jersey, I immediately thought, what ethnicity is he? But evidently he's not. So
I think he's probably an Italian, but he's just a stooge.
Yeah, that's the next step. And then that article by Brandon Smith is really good until it got to the end, and those are overly optimistic statements about how we can survive what's coming our way. I thought it was very good that he made a point of talking about these simplistic slogans that are used to brainwash the populace, and we've been subjected to that all our lives, of course, like diversity is our strength, and now we've got the new normal, and it's keeping us safe.
Build back better.
Yes. Now build back better. That's their modus operandus. Simplistic slogans repeated 1,000 times. It amazes me that people seeing what's happened after what was promised at first and what their life experiences have been, seeing what's happened, that they promised that, this is just for 10 days, this is just for 2 weeks until we flatten the curve. Now, what are we into it? 9 months now?
Yeah.
It just amazes me that people are so brainwashed with fear of infection that they can't see this entire thing has nothing to do with a virus.
Well, and it's ridiculous. The numbers are trifling. Not only are 98% of these false positives from the test, but the actual number of deaths is minuscule. You compare it to the seasonal flu, millions die from the seasonal flu. They're not even keeping seasonal flu statistics now, so they can roll them into coronavirus. Malaria times the seasonal flu. All kinds of causes of death are overwhelmingly greater. So they just fixated our attention on this relatively tiny number of deaths. Actually, if you just look at the world data about all these categories of death, and it gets in proportion, and you realize it's actually nothing significant. But they played it up as fear porn, and they've done a devastatingly good job of it.
And Jim, if I could just point out one more thing, you mentioned this Klaus Schwab monster. It's important to remember this guy is a longtime member of the Bilderberg Group, and also even a member of the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. So this guy's a salesman for a globalist agenda that's been cooked up for a long time, just like this COVID hoax. It's been cooked up for at least 10 years.
You're 100% correct, Scorpio, and this is their effort to move forward dramatically on the basis of protecting our health. Meanwhile, the head of the World Health Organization suggests that COVID restrictions will continue even after the vaccine. Welcome to the new normal. He tweeted, since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, we knew a vaccine would be essential, but it's important to emphasize a vaccine will complement other tools we have, not replace them. A vaccine on its own will not end the pandemic. We still need to continue surveillance, testing, isolating, caring, tracing, quarantining, engaging communities, encouraging individuals. We have exhaustively highlighted. Numerous other prominent individuals have asserted that rolling lockdowns, mask wearing, social distancing, and other restrictions are here to stay. In his book, COVID-19, The Great Reset, World Economic Forum globalist Klaus Schwab asserts the world will never return to normal, despite admitting that the coronavirus does not pose a new existential threat. A senior Army official also said mask wearing and social distancing will become permanent, while CNN's international security editor Nick Walsh asserted mandatory wearing of masks will become permanent, just part of life, and the public will come to terms with it. Bullshit. Meanwhile, Quantus says a COVID vaccine will be mandatory for travel, just as you're observing, Scorpio. Quantus will only resume flights to the U.S. and the U.K. once a vaccine comes to market, and they're going to be requiring a COVID pass. I mean, all of this, it seems, is taking place. If this moves forward, it's a catastrophe for humanity, and that's no exaggeration. A catastrophe. Scorpio.
Well, I believe that this is correct about the mask wearing. I do think they're planning on making it permanent, at least until the new system is completely in place and all the dissenters have been gotten rid of. And I mean that quite literally. I believe that genocide is a big part of this plan. And, one thing that's so diabolically genius about what they're doing is the mask wearing allows them just to look at the population, and they can gauge how successful their propaganda is just simply by looking at how many people are wearing masks.
Yes.
It's horrible. It's dehumanizing. And I feel really bad for little kids. Their childhood is being stolen from them.
Yes.
They're being trained to be slaves. It's just,
Yes.
It's terrible. Just
Scorpio,
terrible.
you're 100% correct. And in discussing the Deagle projections of the drop of over 200 million Americans in the next 5 years, I asked a friend of the mechanism. He said it would be starvation, that they're going to destroy food centers in California. We had this huge wipeout of the corn crop in Iowa. They're using weather warfare, fire. I'm afraid he has it right. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, that piece that we posted earlier today by Thomas Wood Jr. called "The COVID Cult" mentions at the end in a summing up statement the damage being done to our children. He says, on top of the zillion deprivations our kids are suffering, there are more subtle ones. They're growing up to think it's normal to view other people with suspicion and to avoid gestures of affection. Babies and infants are experiencing a world where they can't see adult faces or a human smile. So it's totally insane. These guys like Tedros and Gates and Schwab, I refer to them all as front men. They're front men for an evil empire behind the scenes.
They're monsters, is what they are. They are monsters, and they are a threat to humanity. 100%.
Could I just add one thing, Jim, very briefly? Michael, those are such great points. You're so right on. And, I was watching some footage today of they're reopening schools, and all the little kids are having to be tested. So they have these adults, in front of the door wearing these biohazard suits, right, with the whole outfit.
God.
Yeah, and what it's telling little kids is you are dirty, you're dangerous, and you should distrust everyone because there's an adult in this biohazard suit that's going to stick a Q-tip up your nose every couple of days.
God, and you can find it.
And that harkens back to my my emphasis on their having put out this asymptomatic carrier thing big time at the first of this. It makes everybody a carrier, and you don't know who's gonna give you an infection that's gonna lead to your death. So
every now and then an official acknowledges that if you're asymptomatic, you're not a carrier. But the public impression, impression is the opposite. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it makes
the mass
everyone
media
suspicious.
is not going to show that.
Everyone's suspicious, and everyone is suspect.
Oh,
Sure,
and one
by
other
the way-
comment. John Rappaport's new article today is all about the COVID health passes like Quantus is going to have.
Yeah,
So I recommend that people check that out.
very good. Very good. Well, here's a very presentation to which you alluded of Thomas Woods Jr. about the COVID cult. This is a completely brilliant, less than 20-minute long exposition. He explains how, and I believe this is in Minnesota, about the number of cases rising, but the number of deaths not even actually subsiding. And the complaint was made, well, the deaths take 2 weeks, but he's got the offset chart to take that into account. So he's talking about how the whole these claims are not based on empirical data and are therefore not scientific. Look at the effects of having masks. Spain implemented them there, but look how the numbers have climbed. UK implemented them there. Look how the numbers have climbed. Italy here, look how the numbers have climbed. The masks are useless. Here we have in the Czech Republic versus Sweden. Sweden, which has gone maskless, is actually surviving pretty well. But the Czech Republic has suffered one mandate after another. Here another, the European COVID-19 cases, a mask required versus no mask required. No masks required are faring better than masks required. And here, this is in counties right here in the United States where one had a lockdown and the other didn't. And look how similar they are. The one that had the lockdown is this, or that did not have the lockdown. The fact is, there was no distinction that could be drawn here empirically. And of course, science is based on empirical data. The empirical data does not support the COVID mythology. Scorpio, your thoughts?
That's a great point. It is mythology, and it's non-replicatable. You can't verify any of this crap. It's just outrageous. And I highly recommend Wood's lecture. It's brilliant, cogent, informative, and at times quite witty. There's some very funny parts. He really picks this thing apart and just shows how absurd it really is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Michael, your thoughts?
The controllers of this world have known for many decades now that the people are completely overconfident in the concept of science. I mean, that pure science is just pure logic, really, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's like pure mathematics. But on a societal scale, they've known for a long time that all they had to do was cast something as being scientific to get people to believe it. So consequently, as time has moved on, they've gotten more and more bold with that. So they're calling all sorts of ridiculous bullshit science just to make people believe it.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that Thomas, I can't remember his last name, is a musician from the 80s who had a popular song called "She Blinded Me with Science."
Thomas Dolby.
Thomas Dolby, that's who it is.
It's
and
science.
That was a prescient little piece of writing right there.
Well, this falls into my bailiwick because in my courses in critical thinking, I use a text that distinguishes science from pseudoscience in relation to archaeology as a historical example. But it's very obvious that this is unscientific. It's poppycock. It's just bullshit that's being, manufactured for the benefit of a political agenda.
Well, come on, Jim. We all knew the moon landing's real. Come on.
Yeah, with the most severe consequences. Now look at this. Robert De Niro. President supporters should be afraid of what's going to happen when he's out of office. I mean, this is so awful, I can hardly believe it. De Niro's about as far away from a fan of Trump as one can get. Last December, he wanted to see the president confronted and humiliated in public. Specifically wanted to witness a bag of shit hit him in the face. De Niro also told TV host Stephen Colbert last November, America under Trump is like living in an abusive household. This is all completely ridiculous. In a Friday appearance on The View, De Niro fielded a number of questions from the co-host. And he came out with, I don't know what logic they're using, except they're just afraid as to why they should be still believing, in Donald Trump. They should be afraid of what's going to happen later when he's not around. And they're going to try and call back. The ones who would have the goal to try and call back, it's going to be interesting to see. De Niro added that Trump is such a sham and a bully who will go anywhere to give himself an advantage. He'll pardon himself, he'll pardon everyone around him he can. He's going to be prosecuted, and who's going to possibly be prosecuted and convicted. I'm telling you, this is just disgusting beyond belief. De Niro spent little time just a little time disparaging Trump since his 2016 election. In 2018, he walked on stage at the Tony, raised his fist, and declares, "I'm going to say one thing, F Trump. It's no longer down with Trump, it's F Trump." Many laughed and gave him a standing ovation. At the closing night of his Tribeca Film Festival in 2018, he blasted Trump as well as Republicans with expletives. "I'm not so much concerned about Republicans believing Trump's bellowing bullshit about fake news. They're not that stupid, most of them, but they're pretty effing stupid." He also called Trump a scumbag during the 2018 interview. A month prior to the 2016 election, Deniro called Trump a punk. He's a dog. He's a pig. He's a con. He's a bullshit artist, a mud who doesn't know what he's talking about. This is disgusting beyond belief. I mean, I have liked Robert De Niro as an actor. Take Taxi Driver as one illustration, but many other films. But this is disgraceful beyond belief. I can have no respect for him as a human being or a political thinker. This is just ridiculous. Scorpio.
Well, he's an actor, not a political thinker, and he's proven that in spades many times. And back when De Niro was a real star, back in the 70s and 80s, he did not do interviews. He was famous for not doing interviews, and it's too bad he didn't stick with that plan, because he's been making a horse's ass out of himself for the last 3 years. It really is disgusting. I've lost all respect for him. But the man is really a product of Hollywood. He embodies the Hollywood mindset, and these people really want a one-party system, and I don't think they understand the implications of that if they ever get it.
Their behavior is truly totalitarian. Robert De Niro in these ways is grotesque. It's unbelievable. Michael, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything both of you guys just said. I was just musing how De Niro is very close to the Spanish word dinero, and I wonder if there's a connection there. I wouldn't pay any attention to an asshole like this, except it is slightly concerning that there have been quite a few such statements from high-profile people, including Ocasio-Cortez, and they're basically veiled threats against people who don't think like they do.
Yep.
That's right. Really, fascist, totalitarian. This is the total opposite of democratic. They're not liberal. They're illiberal, and they're undemocratic. They don't even believe in the Constitution, for crying out loud. They want what they want, and they want it now, and it's disgusting. Meanwhile, we want to hear from you, fan mail, pro or con, right? Leave live need to know at gmail.com. Live need to know at gmail.com. Meanwhile, this is pretty damn interesting from Jim Stone's website. Dear employees, as the CEO of this organization, I've resigned myself to the fact that Joe Biden is our president and that our taxes and government fees will increase in a big way. To compensate for these increases, our prices would have to increase by about 10%. But since we cannot increase our prices right now due to the dismal state of the economy, we'll have to lay off 60 of our employees instead. This has really been bothering me since I believe we are family here, and I didn't know how to choose who would have to go. So this is what I did. I walked through our parking lots and found 60 Biden-Harris bumpy stickers on our employees' cars, and have decided these folks will be the ones to let go. I can't think of a more fair way to approach this problem. They voted for change. I gave it to them. I will see the rest of you at the annual company picnic. How brilliant is that?
Hilarious.
I encourage everyone in the midst of this massive conspiracy, the pandemic, the theft of the election, further open your mind to the False Flags and Conspiracies 2020 conference held on the 5th and 6th of December. 24 experts, 12, 15, 18 different conspiracies. Check it out. falseflagconspiracies2020.com. falseflagconspiracies2020.com. I organize a conference. I'll be moderating it. I hope to see you there. Meanwhile, final thoughts. Scorpio.
Well, Jim, I wish you the greatest success with your conference there. And of course, these are no longer conspiracy theories. These are conspiracy realities that we are living in real time. This is a plan, a political plan to take over the world and enslave humanity, and especially to enslave the coming generations. It's a monstrous thing humanity is facing right now. And you mentioned earlier that the liberals don't care about the Constitution. That's so true. I love it when I hear liberals say that, the Constitution's a living document, which is just sort of a code for saying, well, we can twist and morph the Constitution into whatever we want for whatever suits our needs at the moment. It's disgusting. And I don't think most of these people really are, useful idiots. They don't understand what's coming. They think it's going to be some kind of utopia. It's going to be just the opposite.
Oh, you got that right, Scorpio. Michael, your final thoughts.
Earlier today, I was watching your Need to Know show yesterday with Chris Weinert, and it was nice at the end of that show to see Chris Weinert's young son come up and sit on his lap. And I wanted to say that is why we're doing this here. We don't want our children and grandchildren to be enslaved by a global, technocratic, tyrannical system that's run by godless oligarchs with no concept of love and spirituality.
Wow.
Oh, Michael, those are very good words. It's Chris' daughter by coincidence, but your point is impeccable. We're here and we must fight for our children, our children's children, and the future of this great nation. I want to thank David Scorpio from the exotic land of Ecuador, Michael Ivey from Asheville, North Carolina, and conclude by observing that if Joe Biden is inaugurated on 20 January 2021, that will initiate a second American revolution, a fight for our own nation and its well-being. We cannot allow these monsters to take control. Every day they're in office, they grow stronger and we grow weaker. We must prepare, stock up supplies. If you don't know weapons, learn, stock up on ammunition. Remember, their campaign program was defund the police. They want to dismantle the police. It's going to be every one of us of necessity to protect ourselves and our families and to fight for the future of our nation. The Declaration of Independence declared it quite boldly. When in the course of human events, you find yourself subjected to a tyrannical government, you have the right to take arms and oppose it. That will be our solemn obligation should that fateful event come to pass. I can't thank you enough for watching us. We'll be back tomorrow with more news you need to know.